Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Meadville's Sunday service for today, May 30th, 2021. Big shout out to Evan and John for the prelude. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to Karen for leading today's service. Please remember that we continue to have offering, and the information can be found at the website or by talking to Jody at the church. This month's Share the Plate recipient is Chaps, and I'd like to ask Karen to speak for a moment about services upcoming.
And thank you to Amy for sharing and leading this service, and to Kirsten always for making it possible. So I just wanted to take a moment. If you've looked at the oracles oracle under Reverend Alex's column, he talks briefly about the summer schedule and the dates of the summer schedule. And I just wanted to make note that this year, due to the extraordinary circumstances on many levels of where we have been and where we are, we've changed the summer schedule. We're starting earlier, June 13th. There will be 3 services in June, and then no service on July 4th for the holiday, and then 3 more services, July 11th, 18th, and 25th. And that will conclude the summer services. The theme this summer is play. I think we're going to have a lot of fun. That's the June theme, and we're going to continue it into July. That leaves us with August, and there will not be services during August, but there will be a picnic somewhere on the 15th. It's in the works for planning. September 5th is also closed for Labor Day weekend. And then we open with the homecoming service in the sanctuary on September 12th. We hope we'll have a full house. So if anyone has thoughts about these closings, at this point, it just felt like the right thing to do and what we were able to do with the resources we have. It is not planned for a permanent schedule, just this year, again, under the extraordinary circumstances which we're all living in. Hello.
Good morning.
Hello.
Good
morning.
Good morning.
Well, good morning, everyone. Nice to see you.
Yes. So after that greeting of one another, the opening words this morning are, "Those who go before us open the path and pave the road for those of us who come after. The memories and examples of their lives, their fears, courage, their sacrifices, accomplishments, their successes, defeats, who they were, and how they met their lives, and the experiences they faced, can inspire and guide and strengthen us. May we honor them by reaching for our best selves whenever possible, even and perhaps especially in our ordinary daily lives, so that the examples of our lives can offer guidance and strength to those who are around us and those who come after us. And may we honor those who are around us as they choose their own paths, to allow them to learn and grow in the fullness of their own experiences."
Please join me in the chalice lighting. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not curse, to serve you, Spirit of life. And again, join in the unison affirmation of covenant and mission. Our covenant is to be a loving, joyful community that nurtures spiritual growth, promotes compassion, social responsibility, and service in an atmosphere of mutual trust. Our mission is to be a faith community devoted to love and respect, reason, and justice.
And we will continue this morning with our joys and sorrows here in the service. Anyone who has a joy or a sorrow they would like to share, please just unmute yourself, and we will do this fully as a group.
And please feel free, as we do our hymn of the month, We Laugh, We Cry, to join in singing. Again, many thanks to the Community Church of Chapel Hill for sharing this video and allowing us to use it in our services.
glimpse of what we find.
And we believe in life
And in the
strength of love, and we have found the joy
being
together.
together,
And in our search for peace, may we
finally see,
even to question truly
is an
What a beautiful hymn. Both after joys and sorrows and for the service this morning. So in addition to the traditional Memorial Day aspects of this service, there are a couple other things that will be included. And the first I'd like to introduce right now, which is a tradition that I learned just this week from a Cochranton High School student in a creative writing class that I taught, all on Zoom. And we had the opportunity to meet each other in person on Friday in the pouring rain. And I'd like to make this a part of our service this morning. The young woman in the class wrote a poem which include the word Selah, S-E-L-A-H, which she explained is an ancient Hebrew word meaning to pause and reflect in her interpretation. Reverend Alex is familiar with it. He says the word is over 2,500 years old. It's used at the end of 72 Psalms in the Bible, and obviously it carries a full weight of tradition. So I'd like to offer some space for a few reflections this morning, just all of us together without breakout rooms. And I'd like to introduce those moments with the word Selah. Pause and reflect. As a request for us, just for a moment, to change our rhythm and the flow of our attention and interaction. Selah. So to begin our Memorial Day reflection, this is traditionally a time where we hold in our memories those who have or are fulfilling their military duties. And also with our remembering, may we honor them and hold them with respect and dignity and gratitude for their work and their sacrifices for others. How can we do this morning? As we think about in our lives and our families' lifetimes, who we know, who has served, and in what wars perhaps did they participate? In a recent meeting with Reverend Alex, he recalled a service where those who were present quietly spoke the names of servicemen and women. And I would like to invite us to do that now by taking a moment first to pause and reflect about those we remember and honor. And if you choose, after our brief reflection, speak their names. Selah. I'll begin by mentioning my father, Harry Schreiber, and his best friend, Bud Baker. They were both guys who were, in that old saying, they broke the mold with the two of them. And Bud's approach to holding the memories of being in a German prison camp was to make jokes about it.
I'll mention my father, Henry Reed Searle. He had a choice. He was really trying to get away from home, and he was either going to go become a Unitarian minister or he was going to go into the army. And he went in the army, served during the Korean War. And he would always say the exact number of days, weeks, and hours that he was there.
I'd like to call out my Uncle George Sanders, whose death in Vietnam in 1968 was really one of the defining events of my youth and our family's experience. He's my mom's baby brother, and we were exchanging pen pal letters, and it was a very hard moment for a liberal kid to have an uncle in Vietnam and trying to make sense of all that. And I want to remember him.
Mhm.
Excuse me, I'd like to remember my grandfather on my father's side, Clarence Holt. He was born, I think, in the 1890s or thereabouts, and he was an Army aviator in World War I, one of the first. So we never talked about it because I was really too young to understand such things when he and his wife, my grandmother, would come to visit during my childhood. But he had a very good life, but he never talked about the war.
Mhm.
So thank you.
I'll mention my Uncle Leonard, who served in the Marines in the Pacific Theater in World War II and was one of those people who came home physically, but that was before we knew about post-traumatic stress and what that really was, and never really recovered from the war.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'd like to mention another name. I have a student named Barak Levin who I met at Allegheny, who served in the Israeli army, and who also taught me about, not explicitly, but by knowing him, about the complexity of what it means to serve.
Mhm.
And I'd like to call my father, George Lehman, who served in World War II
Mhm.
in the Philippines. And his cousin, Max Hunt, also served in the Philippines. And my father came home and his cousin didn't.
I think we're on. If Mom and I are on,
You are.
okay. I'm sure we want to mention my father, Ralph Baker, who served in the Marines during World War II near Japan, mostly Okinawa. And like we've heard so many times, didn't talk about it much, but you can see it in his face over the years. And we can't even imagine what his sacrifice was.
Right. Is there anyone else who would like to share? If not, thank you for these deeply felt remembrances. And I'd like to extend our thoughts also. We're talking about honoring those who serve. To those who serve beyond the battlefield, this year especially, when so many have served in so many ways. Frontline workers and doctors and nurses and teachers and scientists and people who kept businesses alive and we're greeting the public. And who are they in your life or in your awarenesses? Selah. I'll start us off again by just saying I really, as a former full-time teacher and still a part-time teacher, I would like to honor with gratitude teachers and educators and school administrators on every level, from kindergarten to graduate work. The tasks have been enormous in uncharted territory. My gratitude to all of you.
When I went to vote a few days ago, actually, I was thinking of you, Josh, for having sacrificed to help keep the polls open a year ago, and what that means, how important that was. And thank you for that.
Mhm.
Well, I always think of the grocery store people.
Yeah.
You know, when back in the early days of the pandemic, when we were panicked to go anywhere except the grocery store, I had to go there, and those people were always there.
Yeah.
You know, hanging out, checking you out. You know, so thank goodness for them. So gratitude.
Would anyone else like to offer something? And did someone want to speak? Okay. And finally, for this part of the service, as we honor those around us, particularly those we care most about, I'd like to ask a couple questions here. Can we also honor their paths and their choices even when it makes us uncomfortable or unhappy? In the words of American writer Deb Coletti, can we let people work themselves out in the ways they need to without our help or interference or attempts to control? A very hard thing to do. Can we consider that in some instances that the deepest honoring we can offer is to respect each other's paths and choices with support, but without interference or control? I thought of that last night when I was listening to Josh and John and Evan and DP Ripple when they sang the song Ripple. Josh, correct me if I'm wrong. That path is for you alone. And can you take it a line for the, if I would help you? What, can you do that little section?
If I knew the way, I would take you home.
I would take you home. But that path is for you alone. Can we consider that for a moment? Selah. Does anyone have something they would like to share here?
Well, I would just follow up on that, what you're saying, Karen, because I think it is really important. I mean, the thing last night, Karen's referring to us playing out at the Benega General Store, when we were certainly surrounded by people whose worldviews are likely very different than mine, although it's hard to tell. We don't know. We didn't talk about politics. We didn't talk about gun control or religion. We just sang songs, and everybody sang along with us. And, you know, it's beautiful to have something that unites us that's not about, you know, like-minded people and, you know, grouping up against others. So, you know, I think it's really important to remember that there is wisdom in others, and there's a way that we have to kind of advocate for what we think is right, and also respect the humanity of the people who think a different way. And so thank you for bringing that up.
I like what you said, Josh, about respect the humanity of others. And one of the places where this resonates so deeply for me was as a parent. And we raise children and we take care of them and we do for them. And then they become independent and they have their own lives, you know, and it's not just our children, it's other people we care about. And we in our hearts, we want the best for them, but that's ours. And the best for them is theirs. And sometimes, you know, it's really hard not to just kind of step in or give advice, but to just really, really honor and respect them in their experiences and allow them to have them. All those around us that we care about. And understand that sometimes I have to remind myself of this. My wanting to help can often be because I don't want to have my feelings of anguish about someone else if they're struggling. So I want to fix it. And what am I fixing? And who am I helping? That takes me back to the part of the quote by Deb Coletti. This is a hard thing to do. To allow people to follow their path. It's a very hard thing to do. Anyone else? So as we've been considering honoring the paths of those before us and of others, I'd like to take a few minutes to consider honoring the path of our church. Recently, letters were mailed and emailed to everyone, our members and our friends, about our path forward. And to place this information in hopefully a larger picture, I'd like to take note and make a few points here. First, as we consider our church's path, I think it's helpful to see where we are in the context of other churches in the 21st century, and to consider this time when participation and membership in formal institutions and organizations of all kinds is on the decline, when many people are moving away from formal religion to a more loosely defined sense of spirituality. And of course, most recently, during the numerous changes brought about by COVID, as new definitions and directions on every levels of our lives are being explored. I'm one of the people who doesn't think we're ever going to get back to normal. Normal's gone. We're on a new path. The world is. Also, I'd just like to mention that the current board has been considering the role and the path of our church at the very least all of last year and this year. And when we're looking at where we are currently, we're also looking forward, because in 2025, this church will be 200 years old. So it just helps to see the continuity of where we've been and hopefully where we're moving. And finally, I recently had a conversation with one of my former Allegheny professors who's working with his church board in a city similar in size to Meadville. And they're kind of looking at many of the same things we are, as are many other churches. And he's been doing research and has read numerous books about the survival of churches in the 21st century. And he noted to me that in every book he read, one point was made about these churches, which was that churches who were primarily and mainly concerned with their own church's survival are failing. And that churches that are primarily concerned with creating strong community connections, avenues of cooperation and service in their communities are finding their way, surviving, and thriving. I hope that gives you a little context when you read the letter from Rick and the vision statement, as it is at this point, that you received. And you've been asked to do several things, and I just would like to mention those things. Reverend Alex is going to take next week's service and go into this much more deeply. But for the moment, you're being asked if you would please read and reflect on the vision of our church. You're asked to consider a couple related questions and to share your input. And to do that by attending at least one event that's listed in that letter. One of those was this Sunday's service and next Sunday's service, some Zoom services and some in-person live meetings. And I thought it was important to mention something that Rick stated in his letter. Although the board is leading this effort, your input is critical. As we're considering church and community connection and cooperation, connection and communication within our church and with each other is vital. We hope to hear from everyone. My pages are stuck together. Excuse me. And in conclusion this morning, at my recent meeting with Reverend Alex, he asked me another question about this service when he said, how would you like people to leave church on Sunday? With all that we've considered this morning, the beautiful music we've listened to, and everything we've shared, it is my hope that we will leave this morning feeling ourselves connected to long traditions of many forms of service, past and present, and feel our own hope and enthusiasm for the future as we forge new paths forward. Blessed be.
Thank you, Karen, for guiding us through this very thoughtful service that touched on a number of our principles. Please join me in reciting the chalice, extinguishing and closing words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again.
Thank you for joining us on this Sunday, May 30th. Thank you to both Karen and Amy for leading us and guiding us through this service today. I ask now that you join or join your families at home in coffee hour. If you wish to participate, please stay and I will assign you to a breakout room momentarily. If you do not wish to stay, please think of the themes surrounding this service as you go about your day today and tomorrow. Thank you and see you again next Sunday.